Hello, my lovely students. So this is a continuation to lesson 10.5. Since we have plenty of time, no need to rush. This was about solving trigonometric equations, page 687 in the Algebra 2 book. Okay, so I'll solve a couple of questions for today for you to help you work with the homework, inshallah. So the first question said solve each equation for the given interval. Means they've given me an interval, as you can see. If the interval is in degrees, your answers are expected to be in degrees. If your interval is in radians, your answers are expected to be in radians. Okay, and you have to watch out whether the 90 is included and the 270 is included or no. Here they're not included, so I cannot write them in the answers. Here 0 and 360 are included. So as usual, the questions will start easier. This is practice and problem solving. So over here I think I want cosine theta, not cosine squared theta, so I would root plus or minus, rooting this side to get cosine theta. So cosine theta is plus or minus root of 1 over root of 4, or cosine theta is equal to plus or minus, don't forget the plus and minus because we are solving, 1 over 2. Okay, you will need to ask yourself, when is cosine equal to half? Every half or negative half. Okay, all the halves for the cosine, okay, or the halves for the cosine, remember it's cosine sine, are the ones over 3. Pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, and here 4 pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. For this question, it's given in degrees, so I'm gonna write the 30 and 1 over here, we said half, sorry, so I'm gonna write 60, 120, and then here 240, 300. These are the answers in degrees, and no need to add pi's or subtract pi's because there is a given interval over here for the answers. So these are the ones in degrees, or whatever that's over 3 on your unit circle has a cosine, which is a half or a negative half according to the quadrant. The second question, question 31, again, my first step is to kick the 2 out. So sine squared theta equals to half, and then sine theta equals to plus or minus root of 1 over root of 2, which is plus or minus 1 over root of 2. Sorry, if you multiply by root of 2 over root of 2 to rationalize the denominator, you will end up in sine theta is equal to plus or minus root of 2 over 2. So all, not all actually, they said from 90 to 270, which is quadrants 2 and 3. Quadrant 2 and quadrant 3 only, and they don't want you to include 90 or 270 in the answers. Great. Anyways, these are quarters, right? So which quarters shall I take in degrees? I'm gonna take this one, اللي هو 3 pi over 4 and 5 pi over 4. الأنسر كان sin theta, صح؟ أدي هنا sin theta is root of 2 over 2, هنا sin theta is negative root of 2 over 2. Because it's plus or minus. So definitely I would take a 135 in degrees. Theta is equal to 135 degrees, or my shadow is darkening the video, right? Or 225 degrees. حلو. طيب, the next question they have given me, they gave me sine 2 theta minus cosine theta equals to 0, and the interval is from 0 to 2 pi. So they want the answers in radians, and it's one whole unit circle. Sine 2 theta is a double angle identity, so I know it. It's 2 sine theta cosine theta minus, I'll copy this down, cosine theta equals to 0. Greatest common factor is the coming step. I will take cosine theta as a common factor. I am left with 2 sine theta minus 1, which is equal to 0. Next, I can say maybe cosine theta is equal to 0 or sine theta is equal to half, after sending the 1 to the right and 2 as a division. We want one unit circle, so every cosine theta equals to 0. When is cosine theta equals to 0? Here and here, right? So pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2 are the answers for this piece. Theta is equal to pi over 2 or 3 pi over 2. And for this piece, when is sine theta equal to half? Sine is positive here and there only, and it's equal to half at pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6 only. Pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. So theta is equal to pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. So here, this question has 4 answers. The next question, the interval is again in radians and it's only quadrant 1 and inclusive. 0 and pi over 2 are included. Okay, we'll go back to Pythagorean identities because I have sine squared and cosine squared. I think I would change this one to 1 minus cosine squared theta. 1 minus cosine squared theta equals to cosine squared theta. Distribute 3 minus 3 cosine squared theta. I'll take this to the left side in the same step. Equals to 0. Subtract, these are going to give me minus 4 cosine squared theta, which is equal to negative 3. And then cosine squared theta is equal to 3 over 4. I want to root, probably I'm going to end up with a root of 3 over 2. So cosine theta is equal to plus or minus root of 3 over root of 4 is 2. But I want the answers that are only in quadrant 1, not any other answer. So only in quadrant 1, when is the cosine equal to root of 3? The cosine is equal to root of 3 over 2 in pi over 6 only. I'll not take any other answer. According to the quadrant or to the interval they gave me, I will end up in theta equals pi over 6. And you have to keep a unit circle beside you if you're not memorizing it that much. Okay? The next questions are question number 34. Again, on the given interval, and the interval is in degrees as you can see. Just a second. Okay. Probably it's a very easy one. 2 sine theta equals negative root of 3. Sine theta equals negative root of 3 over 2. On which quadrant? Quadrants 3 and quadrant 4. When is sine negative? Sine is negative in both of them. And here's negative root of 3 over 2 as a sine. We said this one, 4 pi over 3. صح? 4 pi over 3, and the other one is 5 pi over 3. Actually, this one they want in degrees. Since they want in degrees, so I'm going to use 240 and 300. 240 and 300, okay? Where the sine is equal to negative root of 3 over 2. Okay, so theta equals 240 degrees or 300 degrees. And that's it for this question. Okay, over here also it's an easy one. From 180 to 360, from 180 to 360, 4 sine squared theta minus 1. I would start 4 sine squared theta equals to 1, sine squared theta equals to 1 over 4, sine theta equals plus or minus root of 1 over root of 4, which is 1 over 2, plus or minus. On which quadrants? From 180 to 360, that is quadrant also 3 and quadrant 4, and the answer has to be in degrees. Any sign that's a half in quadrant 3 and quadrant 4 is going to be with us. So over here, 210 and 330. That's a negative half and that's a negative half, nothing else. So the answer over here, theta is going to equal to 210 or 330 degrees. The next question, they said solve each equation for all values of theta if theta is in radians. They didn't give me any interval and they said the answer has to be in radians. For cosine 2 theta, I think this is a double angle identity and I will go to 2 cosine squared theta minus 1. And why did I choose this one? Although I have 3 of them, I chose it because I saw cosine theta over here. Plus 3 cosine theta. Let's take this in the same step over here. Minus 1 equals to 0. So I have 2 cosine. I think I'm going to factoring. Plus 3 cosine theta. Minus 2 equals to 0. I can open 2 brackets. 2 cosine theta, cosine theta. Minus 2 can come from minus 2. Okay, if I put a plus 2 over here, I will get 4, and a minus 1 over here, I will get 3, and negative 1 times 2 will give me negative 2 equals to 0. This one, cosine theta equals to half, cosine theta equals to negative 2. This would never happen, it's impossible. And when is cosine theta equals to half? Every possible cosine theta equals to half. Cosine theta is equal to half at pi over 3, and cosine theta is equal to half at 5 pi over 3. It's pi over 3 plus 2 n pi, plus or minus 2 n pi. N is just an integer. 5 pi over 3 plus 2 n pi plus 2 n pi, and so on. Because here they left it open without a specific interval. So you will need to add that. You will tell me that theta is equal to pi over 3 plus 2 n pi, or 5 pi over 3 plus 2 n pi. And you can substitute in the question itself, in the equation given, and check if you're right or wrong. Question 37. Again, I can see Pythagorean identity, and since I can see a cosine over here, I would change this to 2. 1 minus cosine squared theta. Send these here maybe. Minus cosine theta minus 1 equals to 0. Sorry. 2 minus 2 cosine squared theta minus cosine theta minus 1 equals to 0. I always prefer to keep this positive just not to confuse myself. So maybe I'll multiply everybody by a negative 1. So I will end up having this as 2 cosine squared theta, and this plus cosine theta. 2 minus 1 is 1. And since I multiplied by a negative 1, it's going to be minus 1 equals to 0. صح? So 2 cosine theta, and I think I will put a positive 1 over here and a negative 1 over there, equals to 0. So when I multiply, I get negative 1 here, negative cosine theta, positive 2. I would get a positive cosine theta in the middle. So I have two possible answers. Either cosine theta equals to half, or cosine theta equals to negative 1. Cosine theta equals to negative 1 happens once in the unit circle, and it is over here. The only one is 180. They want the answer in radians, so I'm gonna say pi plus 2 n pi. Hina theta equals to pi plus 2 n pi. For the other piece, when is cosine equal to half? Cosine is equal to positive in quadrant 1, and in quadrant 4, half is here. Pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. Pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3, so I don't forget. So theta equals pi over 3 or 5 pi over 3, and both of them, each one of them plus 2 n pi, as much as you need. N is just an integer, a positive or a negative number. The next is number 38. They said cosine squared theta minus, okay, I also can see factoring is a perfect thing over here. Let me just put this here. So I will have cosine squared theta minus 5 over 2 cosine theta minus 3 over 2 equals to 0. We do not like much of over 2 and over 2. It's easier to multiply everybody by 2, but every single term in the equation. So this one would become 2 cosine squared theta minus 5 cosine theta minus 3 is equal to 0. Open brackets, 2 cosine theta. I think I would put a 3 here to get a 6, and I'll make it negative, and here a positive 1. This one would give me cosine theta is equal to 3, which is no way cosine theta is equal to 3 in our life. And this one, cosine theta is equal to negative half. When is cosine theta equal to negative half? Cosine is negative in quadrant these 2 and 3. and cosine is negative, we said cosine is negative half. Cosine is negative half here at 2 pi over 3 and here at 4 pi over 3. So theta equals 2 pi over 3 plus 2n pi, or 4 pi over 3 plus 2n pi. This is one. These are the two answers that you have for this question. I think this is the last pack, maybe. Question 40, no, it's not the last one. Question 40 says, solve each equation for all values, again, all values of theta, if theta is measured in degrees. For this question, أنا بصراحة, I find the simplest way to think of it is to think when is sine equal to cosine. On the unit circle, sine is equal to cosine only here in this quarter and this quarter. Here both are root of 2 over 2, and here both are negative root of 2 over 2. So I can say pi over 4 plus n pi because this distance is pi, and here plus n pi. I don't need to write pi over 4 plus n pi, well, plus 2n pi, and then 5 pi over 4 plus 2n pi. Also, the period of a tan is pi. It repeats itself every pi. So anyways, pi over 4 plus n pi would give me all the answers for this question without any steps. If they want it in degrees, so theta is equal to 45 plus 180 n. If your book is using k, I'm using n like Algebra 2 book. So I'm used to n, I cannot imagine this k. Tan theta is equal to sine theta. Man, if you want to think about this, when is tan theta equal to sine theta? Actually, this never happens in the unit circle except here and there, because sine theta is 0 and tan is 0, and here sine theta is 0 and tan is 0 because tan is y over x, if you still remember that, or sine theta over cosine theta. So here tan is 0 and also sine is 0, so the answer should be 0 plus 180. I should show you some steps for that if you want. Theta is equal to 0 plus 180 n. Okay, I found some silly steps to do over here. Maybe think of sine theta over cosine theta equals to sine theta, and then sine theta equals to sine theta cosine theta, and then sine theta minus sine theta cosine theta equals to 0. Common factor 1 minus cosine theta equals to 0. Either sine theta equals to 0 or cosine theta equals to 1. Actually, not both of them are right. There are extraneous solutions, and your book expects you every time to substitute and check whether they are right answers or wrong. When is sine theta equals to 0? Sine theta is equal to 0 at theta equals to 0 plus 180n. عشان هو عند الزيرو وعند ال 180. When is cosine theta equals to 1? Cosine theta, actually it's not extraneous. Cosine theta, okay. Cosine theta is equal to 1. La, that's right. Okay, that's 1. It's at 0. But it should be at 0 plus 360n. And I don't think you should write this one because it's already covered here. If I put 2 here, I'll get the 360. If I put 4 here, I will get the 2 here. And putting 8 here, we get the 4 and here, and so on. So this one, there's no need for it. This is the answer in simple words. So it's not extraneous or anything. Question number 42. I think just directly I will factor, because the video is getting so long, and this is going to be sine theta. I would put the minus 3 over here and a plus 1 over here. That would give me a negative 2. Either sine theta is equal to negative 1, sine theta is equal to 3. This is impossible. Sine is negative 1. Sine is negative 1 only here. Only at 270. Okay, so 270 plus 360n. Theta is equal to 270 plus 360n. One answer. And here, this one is also factoring. So 4 sine squared theta minus 4 sine theta plus 1 equals to 0. 4 sine theta. Actually, not 4, I think will not work. So 2 and 2, and I think minus 1 and minus 1 would work. صح? Yeah, because I'm gonna get a -4 and here a +1. Everything is perfect. 2 sine theta equals to 1. Sine theta equals to half. When is sine positive? In quadrant 1 and in quadrant 2. When is it halves? Cosine is half at 30. They want in degrees, right? At 30 and at 150. Okay, so the answers are theta equals to 30 degrees or theta equals to 150. They're expecting you to write degrees every time. Plus 360n, sorry, with 360n, and these are the two answers over here. I have 4 more questions and I'm done. Solve each equation. Since they said solve each equation and they didn't mention it's in radians or in degrees and they didn't mention any interval, so the book is expecting you to write the answers in degrees and in radians, just for your own knowledge. So 2 sine squared theta, I think also this one is a factoring and we've done a lot of that. So 2 sine theta and here's sine theta. I would put a 2 over here to get a 4 plus 1 equals to 0. So sine theta equals -half or sine theta equals to 2. Sine theta equals to 2, that's impossible. And sine theta equals to -half. Again, its answers are 30 here. 2 answers. Either theta is equal to 30 plus 360n or theta is equal to -half. I'm sorry, -half is not 30. Sine is -half. I thought it's half. Sine is -half over here and over here only. And 210 and 330. So 210 and 330 plus 360n. Since they didn't mention in degrees or in radians, you must write or theta is equal to 7 pi over 6 plus 2 pi n, or theta is equal to 11 pi over 6 plus 2n pi. So we will write both in these couple of questions, okay? Here, we think I would change this to a sine. So 1 minus sine squared theta, Pythagorean identity, plus 3 sine theta minus 3 is equal to 0. 2 minus 2 sine squared theta plus 3 sine theta minus 3 equals 0. I would multiply everybody by a -1 just to make this positive. 2 sine squared theta minus 3 sine theta, and this was 2 minus 3, which was -1. I will make it a +1 now because I multiplied by -1. So +1 equals to 0. Open 2 brackets. 2 sine theta sine theta. I think I will put a negative for both of them to get a -3, and when I multiply them I get a 1. I forget the camera. Sine theta is equal to half or sine theta is equal to 1. Okay, sine theta is equal to half. You have an option of pi over 6 or 5 pi over 6 plus 2 and pi, and sine theta is equal to 1 at pi over 2 plus 2 and pi. And we've repeated a lot of them. You need to write the answers in degrees as well. This can be 90 plus 360n, and these can be 30 or 150 plus 360n. Okay, up here I can see cosine 2 theta, and I can see Pythagorean identity over here. Or maybe I can just change this to the one that has sines. The one that has sines is 1 minus 2 sine squared theta, صح? The other one is 2 cosine squared theta minus 1. Okay, actually it's not a good choice because I still have a cosine sitting here and I'm not gonna get rid of it. So this one I would change it better to 1 minus cosine squared theta plus this one I would rather change it to 2 cosine squared theta minus 1. I'll send this inside. Minus cosine theta equals to 0. So now I have a 1 and a -1. They will cancel each other. A 2 and minus cosine squared theta would be 1 cosine squared theta minus cosine theta is equal to 0. Take a common factor. Cosine theta minus 1 equals to 0. either cosine theta equals to 0 or cosine theta equals to 1. Cosine theta equals to 0 only at 90, this is one option, only plus 180 n, or pi over 2 plus 180 plus pi n. And cosine theta is equal to 1 right and left, right? 0 plus 2 and right only, oh I'm sorry, only in the first one, plus 2 n pi, or 0 plus 360 degrees n. And these are the two answers. The last one, question 48, full of cosines, and I think I would just factor directly. Greatest common factor actually, plus cosine theta. Well, they're very easy. These questions are very easy. Cosine theta common factor 2 cosine theta plus 1 equals to 0. One option is either cosine theta equals to 0 or cosine theta equals to negative half. Cosine theta equals to 0, again up, pi over 2 plus n pi because it's up and down, or 90 plus n times 180, actually 180 n. And cosine theta is equal to negative half at 2 pi over 3 plus 2 n pi, or 4 pi over 3 plus 2 n pi. In degrees, they are 120 plus 360 n, and this one is 240 plus 360 n. Okay, inshallah the homework will be easy for you. You can start working on it. Thank you. Love you. Bye.